Tomilola poured the glass of water directly onto the floor and set the empty glass back on the tray. The houseboy, a young man with a pressed white shirt and careful eyes, stared at the puddle spreading across Chisom's imported marble tiles and said nothing. "I asked for cold water," Tomilola said. Her voice was pleasant, almost gentle. "That was warm. Try again." The young man picked up the tray and left without a word. Tomilola watched him go, then turned back to the floor-to-ceiling window of Chisom's Victoria Island apartment and looked out at Lagos stretching endlessly below her. Cars, lights, buildings stacked against each other like they were fighting for space. The lagoon in the distance catching the last of the evening sun and throwing it back gold. She had been in this city for exactly 6 hours. It already felt like hers. She had heels on marble behind her and turned. Chisom stood in the doorway of the living room in a silk wrap dress, one hand on her hip, looking at Tomilola with an expression that was trying very hard to be neutral. "What did you do to Emeka?" "I sent him back for cold water." "Tommy, he is staff. You do not pour water on my floor." "Then he should bring cold water when cold water is requested." Tomilola turned, back to the window. "This is a beautiful apartment, Chisom. You have done well for yourself." The compliment landed softly, but Chisom did not relax. She crossed the room and stood beside Tomilola at the window, both of them looking out at the city together. A bit of silence passed between them, not uncomfortable, but loaded. "There are rules in this house," Chisom said quietly. "Rules I am going to need you to respect." Tomilola smiled at the window. "Of course." "I mean it, Tommy." "So do I." She turned and looked at Chisom directly, her big expressive eyes warm and steady. "I am not here to cause problems. I am here to learn, to grow, to build." She held Chisom's gaze. "Trust me." Chisom looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly, the way people nod when they want to believe something badly enough to let themselves. "Dinner is at 8, she said. "Dress well. Someone is joining us." If you are watching this for the first time, subscribe right now and turn on notifications because part 2 is about to go places part 1 could not prepare you for. Drop a like and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now let us get back to Tomilola because dinner is about to change everything. At 8 o'clock exactly, Tomilola walked into Chisom's dining room and stopped. The table was set for 3. Chisom sat at one end in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than a semester of university fees. Her long, silky Brazilian hair pinned at the side, her surgically refined face composed and hosting. Across from the empty seat sat a woman Tomilola had never seen before. She was tall even sitting down, light brown skin, sharp calculating eyes that moved to Tomilola the moment she entered and did not move away. High cheekbones, full lips pursed in the particular way of someone deciding how much of a threat you are before you have opened your mouth. A fitted red bodycon dress, gold jewelry catching the dining room light, pointed heels hooked over the chair rung like weapons resting. This was Sade. "Tomilola," Chisom said, gesturing gracefully. "Meet Sade, my closest friend in Lagos. She has been here longer than both of us." Sade looked Tomilola up and down once, a slow, deliberate assessment that started at her shoes and ended at her face. Then she smiled. The smile did not reach her sharp, calculating eyes. "So, this is the village girl," Sade said. "Chisom has been talking about you." The dining room went very still. Tomilola pulled out her chair, sat down, unfolded her napkin across her lap, and looked at Sade with a smile so warm it could have melted something. "And you must be the Lagos girl," she said sweetly, "who still needs Chisom's table to eat. How long did you say you have been here?" Chisom closed her eyes briefly. Sade's smile stayed exactly where it was, but something shifted behind her sharp, calculating eyes, something that recognized what it was looking at and did not like it. 5 years, Sade said. 5 years, Tomilola repeated, nodding slowly, as though filing the information somewhere useful. And still at someone else's table. Interesting. She reached for the water glass, cold this time, exactly as she had requested, and took a long, calm sip. Do not worry, I'm sure you have your reasons. Tomi, Chisom started. I am only making conversation, Tomilola said, turning to Chisom with wide, innocent eyes. Is not that what dinner is for? Sade set her fork down very deliberately. Chisom, her voice low and controlled. Where exactly did you find this one? The same village you would have come from, Tomilola answered, before Chisom could open her mouth, if God had been slightly less kind to your mother. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Then Chisom laughed, a sudden real laugh that she immediately tried to swallow, and the tension cracked just enough for dinner to continue. But both women at that table knew that what had just happened was not an exchange of words. It was a declaration. Sade picked her fork back up. Her sharp, calculating eyes stayed on Tomilola across the table with the steady patience of someone who had played this game before and intended to win. Tomilola ate her food and said nothing more. She did not need to. The opening move was already made. Later that night, when the apartment had gone quiet and Chisom had retreated to her room, Tomilola stood again at the floor-to-ceiling window in the dark. The city below was still alive. Lagos never fully slept. She was already learning that. Lights blinking, cars moving, the lagoon a dark mirror in the distance. She pressed her palm flat against the cold glass. 6 hours in this city, and she had already identified the obstacle. Already mapped the territory, already made her first move without looking like she was moving at all. Sade had 5 years on her, 5 years of Lagos, 5 years of Chisom's table, 5 years of whatever network and access that bought. Tomilola had 6 hours. She was not worried. She had done more with less her entire life. Her phone buzzed on the window ledge. She looked down at it. Ngozi. Are you okay? Is it everything you imagined? Tomilola looked out at the city for a long moment before typing back. It is more. Go to sleep. I will call you tomorrow. She set the phone down, looked back out at Lagos. Somewhere out there was the life she had come for. The version of herself she had always known existed, but had never had the right stage for. The stage was here now. And tomorrow she intended to learn every single rule. Not to follow them, but to know exactly which ones to break and when. She smiled at her reflection in the dark glass. Lagos had no idea what had just arrived. Tomilola was still asleep when she heard voices. Not loud voices, the kind people use when they think walls are thicker than they are. Low, deliberate, careful. She lay still in the guest room bed, eyes open in the dark, and listened. Chisom's voice first, then Sade's, then a third voice, male, lower, the careful, measured tone of someone paid to observe and report. Kolade. She recognized his voice from dinner the night before, the houseboy with the pressed white shirt and careful eyes who had watched her pour the warm water on the marble floor without blinking. She had noted him immediately. In every house, in every situation, there was always one person who watched everything and said nothing to your face. That person was always the most dangerous person in the room. She sat up slowly, moved to the door without making a sound, pressed her ear to the wood. She poured the water on the floor, ma, Kolade was saying, just like that. Didn't shout, didn't complain, just poured it and set the glass back on the tray and smiled. A pause. Then Sade said.
Then Sade's voice, sharp and satisfied, the way a knife sounds when it finds exactly the right angle. You see what I am telling you, Chisom? That girl is not here to learn anything from you. She is here to study you. There is a difference. Sade, 5 years, Chisom. 5 years I have been in this Lagos with you. I know what a calculating woman looks like when she walks through a door. That one walked into your house and started calculating before her bag touched the floor. Another pause. Longer this time. Tomilola could almost hear Chisom thinking through the wall. She is valuable, Chisom finally said. You saw how Babangida's people responded when I mentioned bringing someone new to the party Friday. That kind of value does not walk through my door every day. Value and danger are not mutually exclusive, Sade said flatly. A grenade is also very valuable, right up until the moment it is not. Tomilola pulled back from the door. She stood in the center of the dark guest room, processing what she had just heard, her big, expressive eyes calm and bright in the darkness. So, Chisom had already told Babangida's people about her. There was a party on Friday, and Sade had already begun her campaign to have her removed before she had been in the house 24 hours. She went back to bed, lay down, closed her eyes, and smiled at the ceiling. Good! Let them talk. Talking people never saw the move coming. Friday arrived wrapped in heat and anticipation. Chisom spent the morning on 3 separate phone calls, moving between rooms in her silk robe, voice dropping whenever she passed Tomilola in the corridor. Sade arrived at noon with a garment bag and a face of something she was packaging as concern. I brought you something to wear tonight, she told Tomilola, holding the garment bag out with a smile that was almost convincing. The yacht crowd is particular. You do not want to arrive looking like you tried too hard. Tomilola took the bag, unzipped it, looked at the dress inside, a safe, forgettable navy blue thing with a modest neckline and a hemline that fell below the knee. Conservative, invisible, the kind of dress that made a woman disappear in a crowd of bold ones. She zipped it back up and handed it to Sade with both hands and her warmest smile. Thank you so much. You are so thoughtful, but I already have something. Sade's smile stayed perfectly in place. Of course you do. That evening, Tomilola stepped out of the guest room in a dress the color of midnight, deep-fitted black with a gold chain at the waist, her natural 4C hair released into a full, voluminous crown, sitting high and proud, her deep brown skin catching the apartment light like the light had been specifically arranged for her. Gold hooped earrings, strappy-heeled sandals, one small gold clutch. She walked into the living room where Chisom and Sade were waiting. Chisom looked at her and said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then, almost involuntarily, "Tomi?" Tomilola asked, "Too much?" already knowing the answer. "No," Chisom said quietly. "Not enough warning." Sade said nothing at all, but her sharp, calculating eyes moved over Tomilola's entire appearance with the particular focus of someone updating a threat assessment in real time. Tomilola picked up her clutch from the sofa. "Shall we go?" The yacht was everything Lagos promised and nothing the village could have prepared her for. It sat on the water like a statement, white and enormous and lit from within, music moving through its walls like a heartbeat, the Lagos lagoon spread dark and glittering around it. Men in agbadas and kaftan and expensive cologne moved across the deck with the easy confidence of people who had never once questioned whether they belonged somewhere. Women in elaborate gilets and sleek evening wear occupied the spaces between them like expensive furniture that could talk back. Tomilola moved through the crowd like she owned the water it floated on. Greetings, double-cheek kisses, names exchanged with the practiced fluency of someone who understood that in rooms like this, remembering a name was a form of currency. Tomilola stayed one step behind her, watching, learning, cataloguing every face, every exchange, every subtle hierarchy expressed through who approached who first and who waited to be approached. Then she saw him. Alhaji Musa stood at the far end of the upper deck with a glass of something amber, his rich dark brown skin catching the yacht light, his sharp angular face angled towards the water, his intense dark eyes moving across the crowd with the measured patience of a man who was used to everything eventually coming to him. silver temples, fitted white kaftan, gold watch on his wrist, catching and releasing light with every small movement. He was not the loudest man in the boat. He was not surrounded by the largest crowd, but something about the space around him, the way people kept a respectful distance even while trying to stay close, told her everything she needed to know about exactly who he was in this room. She felt his eyes find her before she looked back. When she did look, she held the gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then she looked away. Not because she wanted to, because she understood instinctively, the way she understood most things about power, that the most effective thing a woman can do in a room full of men who are used to getting everything immediately is make one of them wait. Chisom appeared at her elbow. "Babangida wants to meet you," she murmured, steering her gently to the left. "Stay close. Let me do the talking first, and for the love of everything, do not say anything sharp." "When am I ever sharp?" Tomilola murmured back. "Constantly and without warning," Sade said without hesitation. "Constantly and without warning." Alhaji Babangida was exactly as she had imagined from Chisom's description. Deep brown skin, full round face, kind but shrewd, big expressive eyes that took in everything from behind a warm smile, graying beard neatly trimmed, embroidered agbada in deep blue and gold, expensive wristwatch catching the deck light with every small movement. He was charming the way powerful men learn to be charming, effortlessly, deliberately, with the confidence of someone who had never needed to try too hard. He took Tomilola's hand when Chisom introduced her and held it slightly longer than a greeting required. "So, this is the one Chisom has been hiding," he said, his voice rich and unhurried. "Nobody hides me. I simply had not arrived yet." Babangida laughed, a full, genuine laugh, and looked at Chisom with something appreciative. "I like her," he announced as though the matter was settled. Chisom smiled, but Tomilola caught the slight tension in her surgically refined jaw, the smile of a woman doing arithmetic in her head. She filed that away too. She found her way back to the upper deck 20 minutes later, not by accident. She had been walking toward it since the moment she looked away from those intense dark eyes and felt them follow her across the boat. Alhaji Musa was still there, still holding his glass, still wearing the patience of a man who understood that the themes worth having were worth waiting for. He watched her approach without moving, without the performative straightening and adjustment that lesser men did when a beautiful woman walked towards them. He simply watched, his intense, big, expressive dark eyes steady and focused, as though she were the only moving thing on the entire boat. She stopped beside him at the railing, looked out at the dark water. "You have been watching me since I arrived," she said. "Yes," he said simply. No apology, no deflection. She looked at him. He looked back. The city lights reflected across the dark lagoon between the boat and the shore, and the music from the lower deck moved through the air around them like something alive. "Musa," he said, extending his hand. "Tomilola," she replied, taking his. His hand was warm and his grip was firm, and when he smiled, slowly, like sunrise, she felt something shift in the air between them that had nothing to do with strategy and everything to do with the fact that she was 24 years old and he was looking at her like she was the most interesting thing Lagos had produced in years. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, slow, deliberate, his intense dark eyes never leaving hers over the back of her hand. She did not pull away. She let the moment sit exactly as long as it needed to. Then she took her hand back, looked back out at the water, and said, "Tell me something true about this city, Alhaji Musa. Something they do not tell you before you are alive." He was quiet for a moment, then he turned and looked at the water beside her. "Lagos," he said, "rewards the ones who are not afraid of it. Most people arrive afraid whether they show it or not. The city smells fear the way water smells rain." He glanced at her sideways. "You are not afraid." "No," she agreed. "That is either very good," he said, "or very dangerous." "For who?" she asked. He smiled again, that slow sunrise smile. "That," he said, "is exactly the right question." Across the deck, half hidden behind a group of laughing women in gold gillies, Sade stood with her champagne flute and watched the entire exchange with her sharp, calculating eyes burning and her four lips pressed into a line so tight it had gone white at the corners. Because Alhaji Musa, the man currently pressing his lips to Tomilola's knuckles under the Lagos night sky, was not a stranger to Sade. He was the man she had spent the last 8 months carefully, painstakingly, deliberately positioning herself to claim. And in 20 minutes, a village girl in a black dress had undone every single one of those 8 months without even trying. Wait, do you see what is happening here? Because Sade is about to do something that will change everything in this story. Subscribe right now if you are not already. Drop a like and tell me in the comments, are you Team Tomilola or Team Sade? And where in the world are you watching this from? Batch 3 is the one that will keep you up at night. Sade moved through the crowd the way a storm moves before anyone realizes it is a storm, quietly, deliberately, with a destination already decided before the first step was taken. She found Chisom near the lower deck bar, laughing at something Babangida's associate had said, her long, silky Brazilian hair catching the boat lights, her midnight blue dress doing exactly what expensive things do in the right lighting. Sade placed one hand on Chisom's arm, not gently, and leaned close to her ear. We need to talk, now. Chisom read her face in one glance and excused herself with a smile that gave nothing away. They found a quiet corner behind the bar where the music was loud enough to swallow their voices. Sade, she said. Just the one word, just his name, but the way she said it, low and tight and vibrating with something barely contained, made it sound like an accusation and a confession at the same time. Chisom closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Sade, do not Sade me. Her sharp, calculating eyes were blazing now, the careful social composure she had worn all evening cracking cleanly down the middle. 8 months, Sade, Chisom. 8 months I have been building that connection. You know that. You have always known that. And you brought her here tonight and put her in the same room as him without telling me. I did not put them in the same room, Chisom said carefully. The boat put them in the same room. I cannot control. You control everything, Sade cut in, her voice dropping even lower. That is literally what you do. You control who meets who sits where, who gets introduced, and who gets kept back. Do not stand here and tell me you could not have kept her away from him tonight if you wanted to. The silence between them had edges. Chisom looked at her oldest Lagos friend, the woman who had helped her build her network from nothing, who had covered for her, vouched for her, shared her table and her secrets for 5 years, and felt the particular discomfort of someone caught between loyalty and money and not being sure which one to hold on to first. So that is what I am, she said quietly. A number. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. Sade picked up a glass from the bar beside her, took one long, slow sip, set it back down. When she looked at Chisom again, her sharp, calculating eyes were dry and completely calm in the way that was so much frightening than tears. Fine, she said, simply. Sade, do not do anything. I said fine, Chisom. She straightened her fitted red dress, touched her gold jewelry once, and looked back toward the crowd. Enjoy your numbers. She walked back into the party, and the crowd swallowed her whole. Chisom stood alone at the bar and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her surgically refined nose and breathed. Tomilola did not find out about the exchange until much later. What she found first was Bisi. She had slipped away from Musa, reluctantly, deliberately, because she understood that leaving first was always better than being left, and was making her way toward the lower deck bathroom when a hand closed lightly around her wrist from a shadowed doorway between the bar and the stairs to the deck. She spun around fast, already pulling back. Easy, a voice said. I am not your enemy. I might be the only person on this boat who is not. Who are you? Tomilola asked, keeping her voice low. Bisi. She said it quietly, glancing past Tomilola's shoulder toward the crowd. I used to be where you are standing right now. New, excited, thinking Chisom is the door when she is actually the cage. Tomilola go very still. Say that again. Bisi looked at her directly. Everything Chisom is giving you, the apartment, the introductions, Babangida, tonight, it has a price attached to it that she has not told you yet. 20% of everything you make through her network goes directly to Chisom. Every man, every party, every introduction, she takes her cut first, and she takes it whether you agreed to the terms or not, because by the time you find out the terms, you already owe her. The music from the lower deck pulsed up through the floor beneath them. Somewhere above them, the stars over Lagos were doing what Lagos stars do, burning bright but too far away to warm anything. "Why are you telling me this?" Tomilola asked, keeping her voice low. Bisi's wide, innocent eyes held steady. "Because she did it to me, and I left with nothing, and I've been waiting for the right person to walk through that door so I could make sure they walked out with something." She pressed a small folded piece of paper into her hand. "My number. When you are ready to know everything about how Chisom's operation really works, call me." She stepped back into the shadow and was gone before Tomilola could form another question. Tomilola stood in the narrow space between the bar and the stairs, the folded paper warm in her palm, the music pressing against her from below, and felt the pieces of something enormous beginning to assemble themselves in her mind. She closed her fingers around the paper, slipped it into her gold clutch.
Walked back into the party with her chin up and her face composed and her big expressive eyes giving away absolutely nothing. The car ride back to Chisom's apartment was quiet in a way that spoke volumes. Chisom drove. Sade sat in the front passenger seat, looking out the window with her sharp, calculating eyes, tracking the Lagos night outside the glass. Tomilola sat in the back, ankles crossed, clutch in her lap, watching both of them in the dark. Nobody spoke for 11 minutes, Tomilola counted. Then Sade turned around from the front seat and looked directly at Tomilola. The Lagos street lights moved across her light brown face in stripes, gold, dark, and her full lips were set, and her sharp calculating eyes were done performing. "Musa is mine," she said, flat, final, the way people state geography. Tomilola looked back at her with the same energy she had used to look at the vendor whose tomatoes she had poured onto the market floor. Pleasant, unbothered, faintly curious. "Does Musa know that?" she asked. Chisom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sade's jaw moved. 8 months. "He held my hand for 40 minutes, Tomilola said simply. "He asked for my number before I left his side. He texted before we reached the car." She tilted her head slightly. "What exactly happened in your 8 months?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing that had happened all evening. Sade turned back to face the front. Her reflection in the passenger window showed a face that was done with composure entirely. Something was happening behind those sharp calculating eyes. A rearrangement, a reclassification, the particular cold focus of a woman shifting from hurt into something far more purposeful. Chisom said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would not make at least one of them angrier. She drove and stayed quiet and did the arithmetic that she was always doing, calculating losses, calculating gains, recalculating the value of every person in her car against the cost of keeping them. Tomilola looked back out the window at Lagos sliding past in the dark. Her phone lit up in her clutch. She glanced down. "Alhaji Musa, I have not stopped thinking about the woman who asked me for something true. Dinner tomorrow. Tell me yes." She read it twice. Then she looked up from her phone and out at the city and felt something she had not let herself feel since the car left the village. Not strategy, not calculation, not the careful management of perception and power. Something warmer and more reckless than any of that. She typed back, "Yes." She was almost asleep when the knock came. Soft, 3 times, then silence. She sat up in the dark guest room, heart steady, and crossed to the door, opened it.
Chisom stood in the corridor in her silk robe, Brazilian hair loose around her shoulders, face bare and younger without the performance. In the dim corridor light, she looked less like the Lagos socialite who had stepped out of that black car in the village, and more like the girl who once borrowed Tomilola's pencil and cried over a boy who chose someone else. "Can I come in?" she asked. Tomilola stepped back and let her through. They sat on the edge of the guest bed in the dark, side by side, the city a low hum outside the window. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Chisom said, "She is going to come for you." "I know. I mean seriously, Tommy. Sade is not Glory from your village. She has been in Lagos 5 years. She has connections I do not even have access to. She knows how to make a person's Lagos life very small, very quickly." "I know," Tomilola said again. Chisom turned to look at her. "You are not scared?" "No. Why not?" Tomilola was quiet for a moment, looking at the window, at the city glow pressing through the curtains like it could not help itself. Then she said, "Because scared people react, and I do not react. I move." She looked at Chisom. "The question is whether you are going to be in my way when I do." Chisom looked back at her for a long time. The corridor light from under the door caught a thin gold line across the floor between them. "The 20%, Chisom said quietly. "Someone told you." It was not a question. Tomilola did not answer, which was its own answer. Chisom exhaled, long and slow. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "When you are settled enough not to leave." The honesty of it landed between them like something dropped from a height. Tomilola looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something she had not expected to see in Chisom's medium brown face in the dark. Not calculation, not performance, something closer to genuine. "I am not your enemy, Tommy," Chisom said softly. "I know how it looks. I know what Bisi told you. Yes, I know it was Bisi. She does this every time I bring someone new in, and she has her own reasons that have nothing to do with your welfare." She held Tomilola's gaze. "But I also know that what I have built here works, and I know that you, in this city, with what you have, you could go further than anyone I have ever brought through that door, including me." The room was very quiet. 15%, Tomilola said quietly. Chisom blinked. "What?" 15, Tommy said, "your commission, not 20. And I want to know every room before I walk into it and every man before I shake his hand." She held Chisom's gaze steady. "Those are my terms. Take them or I find my own way." Chisom stared at her. Then, slowly, almost helplessly, the corner of her mouth moved. "You have been in Lagos for 1 day," she said. "I know. Imagine what I will do with a week." Chisom laughed beside herself, that same sudden real laugh she had swallowed at the dinner table the night before. She shook her head slowly, stood up, tightened the belt of her silk robe. 15, she said at the door. "But Tommy..." She paused with her hand on the door frame and looked back over her shoulder. "Sade is not going to accept this quietly. What happened tonight with Musa, she will not let go. And when she will move fast and she will move dirty." Tomilola met her eyes. "Good," she said. "Dirty I can see coming. It is the clean moves that catch you." Chisom held her gaze 1 more second. Then she stepped out and pulled the door closed behind her. Tomilola sat alone in the dark. The city hummed outside. Her phone glowed on the bedside table. Musa's yes, still warm on the screen. Bisi's number folded in her clutch. Sade's burning eyes in the car still vivid in her mind. She lay back slowly, stared at the ceiling. 1 day in Lagos.
one enemy made, one ally renegotiated, one man already waiting, one informant already in her pocket. She closed her eyes. And somewhere across the city, in an apartment Tomilola had never been to and could not yet find, Sade sat at her own window with her sharp calculating eyes open in the dark and her phone in her hand, and a contact pulled up on the screen, a name Tomilola did not know yet, connected to a secret about Chisom that could burn everything to the ground. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Then she pressed it. It rang twice before the voice answered. "It is time," Sade said quietly. "She is here and she is exactly what we thought she was. Do it now." She hung up, set her phone down, looked back out at Lagos, and smiled for the first time all night. That ending just changed everything. Whatever you think you know about where this story is going, you do not. Part 3 is coming, and nothing will be the same after it. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. Drop a like if that ending hit you the way it hit me writing it. And comment below, whose side are you on right now? Team Tomilola, Team Chisom, or Team Sade? And tell me where in the world you are watching this from. See you in part 3. Come ready.